Okay, I invite everyone to take a nice deep breath and let it all go. I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent Him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do because He who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever He wishes, knowing He goes there with me. I will be healed as I let Him teach me to heal. Okay, we are going to go back to workbook lesson 196. We still have a little more juice here to squeeze out of this lesson. And we will be starting with paragraph number 5, which I'm going to kind of quickly read through so that it follows through in paragraph 6. So the dreary, hopeless thought that you can make attacks on others and escape yourself has nailed you to a cross. Perhaps it seems to be salvation, yet merely stood for the belief the fear of God is real. And what is that but hell? Who could believe his father is his deadly enemy, separate from him, waiting to destroy his life and blot him from the universe without the fear of hell upon his heart? So this paragraph is really trying to help us understand how the image we have of our Father is obviously not one of pure unconditional love. It's a Father that we've literally projected our guilt, sin, and fear onto. And just like we attack our brother thinking we're getting rid of something, we're really attacking ourselves. And I was thinking this week, if we were in person and Bob was sitting next to me and I came up to him and I just punched him in the nose, but instead of him getting a sore nose or a bloody nose, it actually hit me in the nose. And I got the bloody nose and the sore nose. After trying to do that a number of times, I would probably think, no, that's not working quite the way I hoped it did. But if I punch Bob, I don't feel it. I might see some blood or whatever, but I don't have that connection that I've done, that I'm suffering just like I would if I was punching Bob. And literally what the Course is trying to help us remember, to understand, is that literally when we attack our brother, we are causing ourselves harm and nailing ourselves to the cross. Now, within the context of this square, that is absolutely no way what we think or what we experience. What we experience is, I'm an innocent victim, you perpetrated something to me, and I'm very justified to attack you back. End of story. Let's go back home. Everything is put into place. But as he says in that first line, the dreary, hopeless thought that you can make attacks on other and escape yourself has nailed you to the cross. Heavy duty, right? But that's what it's trying to help us to really grasp, understand, and begin to, I guess you could say, even question in our lives, because I'm sure most of us aren't totally convinced that that could possibly be what he's talking about, despite the fact that it is what he's talking about. All right, so paragraph 6. Such is the form of madness you believe. If you accept the fearful thought, you can attack another and be free yourself. Until this form is changed, there is no hope. Until you see that this at least must be entirely impossible, how could there be escape? The fear of God is real to anyone who thinks this thought is true, and he will not perceive its foolishness or even see that it is there, so that it would be possible to question it. All right. So such is the form of madness. And Jesus is telling us very gently and kindly and nicely that we're mad. Not mad like we're upset mad, that we're mad like we're insane. And, you know, he does use that word rather frequently sprinkled throughout the course, not in a means of being unkind or mean to us, but as a means of understanding. If we knew what this held for us, we would never attempt to continue to do this if we really got that this was, you know, our salvation. All right, so such is the form of madness you believe. If you accept the fearful thought, you can attack another and be free. And let me just get something real quick. I didn't bring over here. You know, a couple weeks ago, we had this display where, you know, these two arms, let me see, they're gloves. If we see these two hands fighting, I have to put their gloves on so it looks like they're different. Okay, so they're different. And so we see them as different, and it appears I can fight with that all I want, and I'm accomplishing something because they're separate. But if we took the veil down, we would understand that we are really fighting ourselves, because though we made it appear that there are two here, literally both of these characters are coming from the one mind. And so if I'm attacking another, I'm really attacking myself. Whether we're consciously aware of that going on, that's literally what is happening. And we're actually attacking God, because we're aligning with the thought system in opposition to God. And then when we're doing that, we don't remember who God is. And we literally don't remember who we are as the Son of God, because we've taken on a totally different identity. All right, so until this form is changed, there is no help. And we read a couple sections last week about the idea of this course as being very unique, and that we really need to understand what this course is trying to tell us. And what he's saying here, until you understand the metaphysics, the foundation of the course, it's going to be impossible for you to change it. There's no hope, because you'll be integrating other concepts, ideas, thought systems into this one, and you won't understand until you understand your brother and you are literally coming from the same mind, and that mind is where the problem lies and the solution lies. Because when I recognize that it's not my brother that's my problem, it's the thought or the choice in my mind that's the problem, that I could then make another choice. As long as I'm pointing a finger at my brother, blaming him, which, let me say, we will all continue to do probably for a really, 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 really long time, because that's how it's set up. That's what's, I guess you could say, normal. But what we're being asked to do is start to observe. Watch yourself as you're attacking your brother, and recognize, you know, in the back of your mind, the teachings of the course, which are saying, it's not my brother that's the problem. Okay, so I've lost my peace. It appears that it was because of something my brother did or didn't do. But the truth is, I've lost my peace because I've identified with a thought system which is in opposition to my life as an experience of peace. So the problem is never the brother. The problem is the thought. So it goes on to say, until you see that this at least must be entirely impossible, how could there be escape? And you know, if you have something that's broken, but you don't realize it's broken, you're not going to fix it. You're not going to get to the bottom of it. And the Course is trying to help us understand, you don't know that there's something broken. You think your brother's an idiot or there's a problem in the world and that's what needs to be fixed. But the real problem is the mind. And until we get to the core of the mind being the problem, we're going to continue to play in the arena where the problem doesn't even align, and we'll try to solve the problem in a way that isn't really going to ever solve the problem. Until this shift has been accomplished, you cannot perceive that it is but your thoughts that bring you fear, and your deliverance depends on you. So again, Jesus is bringing us back to my mind, what's going on in my mind. And I think it's so important to be not just diligent as you're working through this, but also to be very gentle, because this has already been set up. This is what we've been doing for eons of time. And this is not about browbeating yourself or feeling bad because that choice was made. It's simply an awareness of, oh, if I find myself here, it's because it was set up here. And I don't have to take it personally. I don't have to take it like I did something wrong or I did something bad or any of those attributes that good little egos usually cling to and carry with us in our bag all day long. It's simply an effect of a cause that was put into place that gets reinforced when we continue to recycle it by our response of it being the problem lying in something outside of me. So he's constantly trying to help us bring it back to where the real situation or the real issue is, so that we can let go of this painful path that we are on.
Marianne?
Yes.
What just came up for me while you were talking about this is and I like the little, what we consider little things, because I still think there's a hierarchy of illusions. My brother, my biological brother, who I live with, he last weekend he came home with coffee from McDonald's for himself, and it hit me like, what the heck? Where's mine? You know. And I had a bit of an outward reaction to it, but then it's like, wait a minute. But I was still upset for a little bit after it. You know, I didn't say anything to him, but still, it was still there for a little while. And then this morning I had a hair appointment and I stopped at McDonald's, and the thought came up, get him one. And for me, this is the practice. Check, okay, what's the purpose here? Is this to make him feel guilty because he didn't get me one? Check in. What am I doing here?
Right.
And there was some of that there. I want him to feel bad because he forgot about me. But that turned into, get him a cup of coffee, not to make him feel guilty, but to make him see or make him realize that his getting coffee for himself had no effect.
Which is our ultimate goal. Yes, ultimate goal. And I like the way you use kind of the word exploration, because it wasn't just, okay, well, I'm going to get him coffee. It was really a concentrated look of the facets of what was going on there to come to. And sometimes we really just have to kind of look at it from all angles and then make a choice or a decision, but it's coming from love because we've explored all the possibilities, which is really what we're being asked to do. Really pay attention. What are the dynamics of every choice I make?
It was very helpful.
Excellent.
And wouldn't you say you can't get past it until you look at it?
Absolutely.
Like you can't, there's nothing that, the thing is that we start out, I mean, I'm just thinking of as a child or children, you really are, you have to recognize there's a difference between you and whoever else is in the house, and you become to distinguish the different people. But then, so that's the only thing we have to give us a signal at that time. And then what kindness is more showing how, when, as a child, when you give something to your actual brother that makes them happy, and then somehow you have overcome that, like separation. But it's until we see that what we're looking at is two separate people, and how do we get past that? And so it's interesting how you can't get to it until you go through it.
Yes.
It's what it seems like.
Right. And you can't fix it unless you know it's broken either. And again, with Rose's story, someone came home with a cup of coffee. Those are the facts. And the Course talks about this isn't a course about facts, it's about interpretation. So in that particular moment, Rose became aware, wow, I feel slighted or left out, or whatever word you might put to that. And that's just showing us, okay, I feel left. All right, what's the dynamics behind that? And really pay more and more attention, observe more and more detailed, like I would say, so that we become aware of, oh, there it goes again, I'm feeling lack. Well, again, if I was here, I would not feel lack, if my brother brought me and didn't bring me coffee. It would not even enter the mind. But the fact that it does is something to look at.
Like, you could have, I guess the thing with coffee, if if they know that you like it and know what to get, but you could even get mad because they brought it to you. Like, I don't like it like this.
Yes, and that's an excellent point, because what would upset or bother any of us today may be the total opposite thing tomorrow, and yet it's still something to observe, because we're constantly playing some kind of crazy game in our head, and that's what we really need to pay attention to. Yeah, Denise, go ahead.
The amazing thing that I gathered from that is that the initial reaction of, hurt, disappointment, whatever, and then realizing that that was in her mind, and it was of no consequence that he brought a coffee, but she flipped it and brought a coffee with true motivation of, not I'm going to rub it in your face, because that would still be ego, but rather to offer kindness and love and just an appreciation and small way, right? Like,
right. But yeah, the initial motivation was to rub it in his face. I had to look at that.
Took it, but then you took it, but you still ended up in the place of love in offering the coffee.
But that's from looking at the fact that I wanted to rub it in his face.
It's very cool that you were able to do that entire process in a short period of time and get right back into it. And I can see that, but that makes a lot of sense about how I'm supposed to be looking. Yeah. And what I'm reacting to is usually a first indication to start to peel that back. So Thank you again.
Right. And I think it's, I know some people that are fairly new, you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, all this nitpicking, so you didn't bring your coffee. But this is really about feeling what's going on right now. Am I being affected by this? Because that's telling a story of what's going on within me. And again, it's not what's happening on the outside, it's how I perceive the experience of what's happening on the outside. And if I can get in touch with those levels, and just like Denise was saying about Rose, well, it was beautiful how she quickly moved through all that. Well, that's because Rose has been doing this for a really long time, and at first she didn't catch it, and now she's catching it more quickly and becoming very fine-tuned with all the intricacies of how the ego plays out its many, many games, and it doesn't care how it gets you as long as it gets you. So when it comes to mind, we really want to catch, oh, I just want to smash that into his face now. Oh, okay, not so loving, huh? Interesting. I thought I was a loving person, and look at that. And then really sit with that. And then we can turn, you know, we can eventually come to that place where it's really a genuine offering of connection and love. Same situation, totally shifted, like almost right before our very eyes because of the desire.
Yeah, and the thing was, he, you know, I just, from his reaction when I said, really, you didn't get me one, he didn't even occur to him.
Right, exactly.
And then he was like, well, I'll just go and get you another one.
Aww.
And then I was like, no, this is my problem.
Yeah.
You know, don't worry about it.
Yeah, we're always trying to fix it. He tried to fix it. Like he wanted, you know, like I never could understand if something like that happened. I would want to, you know, correct it, and then they go, no, never mind. Like, you idiot, how could you be so dumb? But I'm not going to let you help me either. So it's very interesting how upset you get with it all.
Yeah,
whatever it is.
Exactly. And again, it really work on that immediate response you have. Okay, I'm upset because he didn't bring me coffee. Okay, and don't pretend that away. We want to really hone in on that space, because that is what is trying to tell us where we are. And the only way I can bring it to healing is to know where I am. And, you know, I know I'm going to speak for myself, some do-goody people out there where for years and years of my practice, I would, oh, well, that doesn't bother me. Well, it did bother me, but I pushed it under the rug, which didn't allow for the opportunity for healing. So as we, you know, peel back those layers, I guess you could say, and really get in touch with, oh, that did upset me. All right, let's start with, I'm upset. I thought my brother did something to me to upset me. I know from doing the course, it wasn't him. Let's go back here. Now I can shift it over and try something different.
Well, at least the other thing about collapsing time that we talked about last week is, so, you know, I can remember mulling over something that happened in the morning and not liking it, but saying, no, it didn't bother me. And then, you know, I would carry that around all day long. And now you see there's another way. I mean, you don't even realize you're carrying it around until you all of a sudden, you know, you're still chewing on something in your mouth that you can't get rid of. And that's how it, you know, I think that's like the basic thing that happens to us, is we get into something, we can't get rid of it. And that becomes, you know, the sore spot. And then finally we'll turn to the Holy Spirit. Like it's in that's, you know, or you would finally, you could be so worn out with it, you just like say, okay, forget about it, you know, and go off on some other thing you were mad about 2 days before that. So now it's like you have an opportunity to, you know, just go, oh, look at that, and then ride it out instead of keep it. And because you don't even know you're doing that. You think by showing a certain face that you've actually solved a problem.
Right. And I loved your words, chewing on it, because boy, if you're carrying something around for hours, days, months, years, you know there's a major issue that needs to be healed there. Major issue. And you know, that's the programming of the ego mind, is to have that there. And again, the quicker we catch it, the quicker we can make a shift with it. And oftentimes when we're just starting out, it will go on and on and on for quite some time before we catch it. The moment you catch it, there's your opportunity. And I'm going to read that last line in paragraph 7 again. Until this shift has been accomplished, you cannot perceive that it is but your thoughts that bring you fear, and your deliverance or escape depends on you. Again, Jesus is trying to help us understand, not by pointing the finger, making us feel bad, but simply of understanding. If you think you're an innocent victim, it is because you set it up that you would be an innocent victim. And you have to have a perpetrator to play the game of innocent victim. And the perpetrator is not the problem. The problem is that we're holding this thought system in our mind because we're afraid of this. So when we can flip it around, and like I loved Rose's words, when her brother offered to go get the coffee, she said, no, this is something I need to work on. Because she knew he wasn't the problem. And as we keep working on this, as we keep processing through this, it will dawn on us more and more frequently, wait a minute, that's not where I want to go. I'm not going to go there to that person or that situation. I'm going to go back to the cause so I can find the real healing. You know, I like the image of a watch. If my watch is broken or my clock is broken, you know, 2 times a day, it's the right time. And I can move the handles around and make it be the right time. But until I go within and get that battery out of there, or whatever it is that's working that particular clock or watch, and replace it, it's going to be broken, even though it appears to be okay occasionally. The real problem isn't the hands on the watch. The problem lies underneath. Well, the problem isn't here. It lies underneath, or in this particular case above, because of the way this is shown. But this is where the problem is. And
Don't you think I think it's particularly freeing for me to think that it wasn't that Rose, your brother, wasn't the problem, and you weren't the problem either.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, that you were upset, but you were not the problem. The problem was that you could have that thought and keep it. That would be the problem. Where that, you know, you didn't have another way out of that thinking of that thought.
She went through the beautiful process after having the awareness and knowing the process. And I'm only smiling, and I don't mean to cut you off, Andrea, but
no,
I have a form for the process, if you will, because I'm often aware and want to take it to those next levels, no matter how big it is of an issue or how small it is of an issue. And I understand that ultimately that, accompanied with asking for help, healing results. So that's inspirational to me, because so much of the program, when I read it, because I do enjoy the joys of life, but and the beauty around me, whether it's an illusion or not. But I do find joy in this, in this concept that we were just talking about, and the process of discovering thought and the healing. So
right. And your comment about big or small, the Course is very adamant. There's no hierarchy in illusions. You either believe it's an illusion or you don't believe it's an illusion. Doesn't matter if I broke my fingernail or somebody bombed my house, all the same. So this is beautiful in the respect that we can apply this to literally everything. A cup of coffee. Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which just promotes greater awareness within ourselves and the ability to process it, just as Rose has. And that was fucking awesome, pardon my language, for those that may be offended, but yeah, I don't really care. So
really, I didn't notice that.
but I do.
But to look at it, you find it offensive.
Well, it's just
there we go.
Some kind of words. It's just a
word.
It's just a word.
What meaning am I giving it? It's
and emphasis.
Else.
I always do it. It's emphasis, and I know that.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm talking about if I find it offensive.
Because mine just it's coming from a place of zest.
Right.
No, Marianne.
Yes, Bob.
Sorry, Rose.
having trouble with our sound. I've been trying to talk to you, and up on our thing it says that you had me turned off.
Huh. Well, but you can unmute
now.
We hear you now. We hear you now.
Yeah.
But you couldn't hear me before.
Right. Okay.
But anyhow, is what I want to say about Rose. As soon as Rose had said that she bought that extra cup of coffee, I immediately felt that she was coming from love, and I didn't feel all the rest of this
Right.
stuff.
And I think she
Instantly,
was at
I
that
could
point.
feel it.
But before she came to that point, she went through the process that wasn't quite love yet.
Yes, fuck yes. Oh,
Well, and of all the things that stand out, it's that the piece that there was something missing and she found it, which,
Well, there you go.
like you wouldn't even, well, what's this? Like you said earlier, well, it's just a cup of coffee. Who cares about that? That's kind of a thing to talk about, but it's that actually promoted the gift of peace in its the way it played out, which was what we were all after, and we could emphasize it or not however we wanted to, but it really, that's what came out, that's the miracle.
Right.
Now I understand you. I understand that you're supposed to look at this stuff, but also the Course of Miracles says not to analyze. That analyze is the ego, and
Right.
this is what I hear about looking at the stuff is analyzing it. So this kind of contradicts it.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Bob, and that it's kind of like a fine line thing in that respect. But if you don't look at it, and there's actually numerous places where the Course talks about the idea if you really need to look at what the ego's up to. And I think what it is observing where you are, not from a place of judgment or even trying to figure out how to solve the problem, but as an awareness of what you're up to or what your ego's up to in your thinking. And as Rose went through that process, she was very honest with each step along the way. Yeah, I'm going to buy the coffee because I really want to show him, I'm one-upping him basically, but eventually she came to the realization that I don't want to do it from that place. So it's not exactly a, what was the word that you used?
Analyzing.
What?
Analysis.
Analyzing, right. Yeah, it's observing, not necessarily analyzing. And I know it sounds very similar.
How do you split the two? I don't.
For me, analyzing is the ego trying to figure out
how to solve the problem.
This book. Yeah, how to solve the problem, how to figure out, how do I get to the right side of the chart?
Right.
Without looking at ego, because we don't want to look at ego.
Right. Yep.
But looking at ego, I have to look at my motivation. I'm going to give another example, Marianne, if it's okay.
Go for it.
So I had put up a bird feeder a few weeks ago in the front tree, front yard, and I noticed squirrels sitting up there eating from it, right? And I had no problem with that, no problem. One day I'm looking out the window and there's a squirrel sitting up there, and I went berserk. I opened up the door and I'm screaming at him, get out, Okay, what changed?
There you go. There you go.
What changed?
You changed.
Peace.
Yes.
Your peace.
These are the things I want to look at. What's going on here? What's happening? I didn't have a problem with this before. Now I'm having a problem with it.
Yes. Yeah. Excellent. Yes. And be very aware every day it's going to be, doing one of these. It's, playing games with us all the time. And that's why, again, obviously the second day you were pretty aware there was an issue going on. And maybe that day you had some other things to have issues around, so you didn't need that one that day. But Really pay attention. Yep. Pay attention. Very cool. But Bob, I would say just keep looking. And, you know, normally on my other chart from class, I had the big words look over here because it is important that we look to see what the ego's up to. And I think Rose was right. The analysis comes from me trying to think I know how to fix the problem that I think I have now, instead of recognizing the problem doesn't have anything to do with the squirrel. The problem has something to do with my mind that is identified with my ego.
But can't you change the problem by choosing the Holy Spirit?
Well, that's fine, but be careful you don't miss the step of I'm the one that chose this scenario to be here because I wanted a decoy to blame my problem on. So that's important that we don't forget that step.
Yeah, I'm looking at the block. I can't see the right side of the chart until I look at what's blocking it.
Correct. And then it will go away if I'm looking without judgment or attack.
But I think is what's blocking me from going the other side of the chart is my choice, and I can choose whatever I want.
Right, but again, you have to know what's broken before you can choose.
Yeah, my thinking.
Well,
it's all was my thinking, and so therefore I'm choosing the thinking of the Holy Spirit.
Okay, but be careful. It's not Bob's thinking.
Right.
Right. It's the thinking that the ego is doing, I guess you could say.
No, but I have the choice.
Right.
I can make the choice.
Right.
Well, but you don't initially, I don't see the squirrel as my brother at all.
Oh, heck no.
You know, I'm like, what the hell? This is no brother. This is a freaking squirrel, without using exactly the terms that Denise did, but getting close.
I'll stand for you gladly.
Okay, it's all right. I'll get there. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh yes, but the squirrel has to eat too. Yeah.
Well,
But I don't see it that way at first. I don't. At first,
the squirrel. It's not about the squirrel.
Right. Exactly.
It can't be, because I didn't have a problem with it for like 2 weeks.
Yep.
Right.
And one day, boom. So it can't be the squirrel.
Yep.
That's what I look at. What happened between yesterday and today?
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, and what Ken, I listen to Ken every day. And what I'm listening to right now, he's talking about, and I think in that interview too, he's talking about, you can't disturb my peace if I'm seeing that I'm not at peace to begin with. I was not at peace before I saw the squirrel.
That's correct. Correct. Yes, all that was I'm not at peace. Oh, it's the squirrel. It doesn't have anything to do with the squirrel. It has to do with the fact that I was not at peace to begin with. And we're not consciously aware that that's going on until we have the experience. Then we know, oh, this is engaged. Yep.
I don't know. I find it kind of confusing, you know.
Well, I'd say we all find it kind of confusing.
You know, I think that I'm learning to analyze without analyzing and asking why, because that's what takes me down a rabbit hole right back to where I don't want to be.
Okay. Yep.
You know, because why it takes it completely away from the fact that, oh, I just became aware of whether I was in the ego or whether I was going along and going with the flow and enjoying the other side.
Right.
But when I had picked out on was the squirrel, the reason I picked the squirrel this time and not the other time is because I'm not at peace and I'm looking for something to blame it on.
Perfect. Yes.
And before I was probably a little more at peace and wasn't looking for anything to blame to blame
Or
him.
I was just directing it at something else.
Right.
That's usually what's going on.
Something else was more conveniently located.
Right.
But then who's that an attack on if it's not
You're
on
thinking
another
that
person?
It's on
helping the
me.
birds
I'm
was-
attacking me.
Well, ultimately, you were always attacking me. You know, because again, when it talks about the idea
Right.
of in this lesson, where is that page? It can be, but myself I crucified. She's not crucifying the squirrel. She's crucifying herself because
Yeah.
she is recycling the thought system of the ego when she responds that way. And again, this is not about, and it's really important that you hear this, it's not that you won't continue to start with attack. I mean, that's a no-brainer. That's going to continue to happen. But do I choose to stay there? That's where the difference starts to come in. When we become aware, oh, wait a minute, that's not working for me. All right, now I'm starting with a slate that's cleaned off, and I'm starting with a new program. And the program is, I'm recognizing that the squirrel triggered the fact that I've chosen for this. And now I can do something.
Right, right. And sometimes I don't want to do anything.
And sometimes I don't
Right.
want to.
Right.
But my feelings are, even if you don't want to yet, and you know that, and I've given the example of sometime you're in the midst of something and the voice in your head will say, you could choose differently. And you go, nah, not today, not in the mood. But even that's a step in the right direction, because before I didn't even know there was an option. I was just brain dead in this square, and there was nothing I could do to find another way. So I think it's important that we're really honest with, okay, today you can't go there. Thank you very much for the message, but I'm not taking it. And that's
Well, maybe it's just because you're proud of yourself that you set this thing up for the birds. And they're, my neighbor was very interested in the birds, and she one time made a special suet for the birds, and she saw the squirrel and she became so agitated she ran outside and fell down and slipped on her driveway and broke her arm. So then that was what she learned, that didn't pay off to get so mad at the squirrel. But you think you're having this lofty thought about birds, and then the squirrel comes along and whatever.
Exactly. All right, so any other conversation around that? Because I'm going to move on to a couple other places that I want to reinforce this idea that it's me that's causing this to happen. It has nothing to do with squirrel or coffee or my brother or the car or anything else. Anybody else have anything? Okay, guess not. All right, so we're going to just go to a couple real quick quotes. I'll tell you the page. If you want to go there, you're welcome to. As I said, I'm just going to do like a couple lines from a couple different places just to really strongly emphasize this concept. So the first one is on text 198. I think it's paragraph 1, but I'm not positive.
Paragraph 4.
Your paper still, so I'll wait a minute.
Did you say page 198?
Correct, text 198, yes.
Like section 3, from darkness to light?
That's the place. All right, so when you are weary, remember you have hurt yourself. He's trying to tell us, if you're having a problem here, it's because this is a choice that was made and you're hurting yourself. A little further on that paragraph, it says, unless you hurt yourself, you could never suffer in any way, for that is not God's will for his son. So if we had remained here, nothing over here could hurt us in any way. He's pretty specific about that, pretty direct. Right on, no messing around. If you hurt, if you suffer, if you're in pain, if you feel guilty, any of those things, it is because you're aligned with this. And again, this is not being said to make us feel worse than we already feel. It's about helping us to recognize, if this is what's broken, I need to get to the core of what it is if I want it to be healed. All right, we're moving on to workbook lesson 281. And this lesson is called, I can be hurt by nothing but my thoughts. Right there, I mean, talk about potent, man. I can be hurt only by I can be hurt by nothing but my thoughts. So again, and it's not talking about Mary Ann's thoughts. It's talking about the thought that chose against separation. That's what's going to bring this into focus in this square down here. So it says, Father, your son is perfect. We were aligned with this side, we would be understanding we were perfect. When we think that I am hurt in any way, it is because I have forgotten who I am and that I am as you created me. So again, when we're dropping this side, you're literally asking, aligning to find out how he sees us, and how he sees us is perfect. There is no problem. And that's a real challenge with this scenario, because I think I have a problem, and most of us, when we ask to see it differently, want the problem fixed. That's not really what the answer to solving the problem is. And I know that's a challenge because we all have bills to pay and things to do and blah, 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 blah in the world. And I think my problem is fill in the line. And this isn't really solving that problem. All it's doing is taking me to the mind where healing lives, so that eventually I will catch on to the realization that I am one, not two, or duality. All right. Let me just, well, you don't have to go there, but I'm going to go back to the paragraph I read before and read that one line again. Unless you hurt yourself, you could never suffer in any way, for that is not God's will for you. God's will is that you remember you are pure, unconditional, absolute love. He doesn't want to come and fix your little boo-boo. He wants you to come over here where you know that you are in line with who you really are, which is love. And there's a really beautiful section, and I don't know exactly where it is, where Jesus says, it's not that we can't judge, it's impossible for us to judge, because if we were to be able to judge, we would have to know absolutely everything from the past and the future in order to judge. So for us to even think we can judge is totally ridiculous. But again, watch us try. Yeah, go ahead, Denise.
So we're not trying to necessarily, it's any thought, I guess, supposedly that you have a reaction to that comes up in the mind, but things from the past and the future, you know, and those kinds of, I mean, that's just entrenching more in, I don't know. Even in the present, there are moments that crop up, right? That
yes,
you know, that remind you of it. And then forward from there, I just don't, I don't necessarily want to go into the past to like pull all that out, like, unless I guess something comes into my mind.
Right. I would say, well, you know, and again, it's always tricky because, you know, maybe if you're having some issues that are still unresolved, you may go to a therapist. The therapist will try to bring stuff from the past. And in that context of that healing process, that might be helpful. But eventually you'll come to a realization that if I'm dragging the past in with me, I'm just repeating, you know, put me on repeat or loop, you know, thing. And
that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Is it, we're in the now, present, enough coming through to even, you know, to peel apart and moving forward. So
right, but
that's what I'm asking.
Right,
that's,
but I would agree with you if in the moment something from the past comes in, that's an opportunity for you to review the past and observe it through this.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. If it's there. Otherwise, there's no, digging isn't, part of
Not
this.
the- right.
Well, not that way.
Yeah. But again, if you're in a therapy kind of a situation, that's part of the healing process in that phase, that might be helpful. But this is not really where this is taking us. But yes. if it's
No,
in
not
that,
hanging on. Like, no, that's what I mean. Present and forward. Yeah. And that's where our power is anyway.
Exactly. But just like Rose with the squirrel, a memory of the past is the same thing.
Yes.
I had the lack of peace, the thought of something in the past pops up. So observe what's going on through the lens of show me how to see this through your eyes instead of mine. Because mine always come with pain or suffering or something delightful like that. All right, so back to
and as what comes to my mind is Brian Weiss's books, where he takes you not only into the past but in the past lifetime.
Correct.
And a lot of times when you look at something that happened in the past lifetime, helps secure what is happening in this lifetime.
Yes, that can happen. And, we just talked about the idea of recycling thoughts in this lifetime. Well, some of those things from the past are recycled from many lifetimes. The story of Helen and Bill, where she was a priestess and he stole the main stone out of her crown or whatever it was. And in that culture, it was her job to, and he was a slave, it was her job to stab him in the heart with a, something, I don't know, dagger or whatever. And she couldn't do it. And so they put her out in the sand in the hot, with no clothes and no food to die. Well, when she walked into this lifetime and met Bill, there was already issues that were not explained logically in, being introduced to this individual. And that's why the healing process is so much, I guess you could say, deeper than what we think it is.
Right.
But again, if we recognize, okay, I don't know why I have this, attack thoughts against my brother. I can't figure it out, but they're there, and acknowledge them and become aware that they're coming from somewhere in that belief system of separation. Yep. It's everywhere. All right, so paragraph 2 in workbook lesson 281. I will not hurt myself today, for I am far beyond all pain. My Father placed me safe in heaven watching over me, and I would not attack the Son he loves, for what he loves is also mine to love. So again, this is sort of like the turning around aspect of, I don't want to play attack games any longer when you come to that point. I want to play, show me how to find out who I am and who my brother is. All right, so we're going to go to text 587, paragraph 10. And again, one more place where Jesus very specifically is trying to help remind us, this is because we want it to be here. We want to be an innocent victim and have perpetrators so that we can camouflage and hide where the real problem lies. And the Course is coming down and saying, well, we're getting rid of the camouflage. Let's get to the core. Let's get to the problem. So again, text 587, paragraph 10. The secret of salvation is but this, that you are doing this unto yourself. No matter what the form of the attack, this is still true. Whoever takes the role of enemy and of attacker, still is this true. In other words, it doesn't matter which role you play. As long as you're playing a role of duality, you're over here. Whatever seems to be the cause of any pain and suffering you feel this is still true. So again, he's trying to make this simple for us. If you're suffering or pain, no matter how it comes, no matter what it looks like, it's because of the choice, not because of what you did or didn't do in the world. For you could not react at all to figures in a dream that you knew you were dreaming. We knew unequivocally, excuse me, that this dream that we experience was a dream, and it simply is a dream. Who cares what happens in my dream? When I wake up, it's going to be gone. But we don't believe that. We believe this daytime dream, it's real, it has validity, it has, form, it has content, it has whatever else you want to add to that. It's real. My nighttime dream, nah, I wake up from those. This one's real. All right, I'm going to read that line again. For you could not react at all to figures in a dream. You knew that you were dreaming. And again, we don't know that we're dreaming at this point. Let them be as hateful and as vicious as they may, they could have no effect on you unless you fail to recognize it is your dream. Now, how many of you want to say as your affirmation every day, let them be as hateful and vicious as they may, because they have no effect on me? Well, I don't think any of us are quite at that point yet in our spiritual journey. But there will come a point in time where no matter what happens in the world, it won't affect me because my mind will be completely aligned with who I am. And this will be like a passing feather that brushes by. No big deal. And again, if we take Jesus of the Course from the perspective of the Course, he was dying on the cross. His physical body was going through whatever that looked like. But he was completely aligned with the mind of truth, and so none of that affected him. So he was literally living that statement because he was no longer dreaming. He knew who he was. He woke up from the dream, not bodily wise, but mind wise. And that's what this is all about. All right, so the next paragraph, it says, this single lesson learned will set you free from suffering, whatever form it takes. And again, the secret of salvation is that I'm doing this to myself. It doesn't have anything to do with this thing, this character, this situation. It has to do with what part of my mind am I dreaming this dream from? And am I ready to awaken from that belief system? And the answer for most of us is probably not yet. But every time, the squirrel takes your piece away or the cup of coffee takes your piece away, these are opportunities to look a little bit deeper. The Holy Spirit will repeat this one inclusive lesson of deliverance until it has been learned, regardless of the form of suffering that brings you pain. And that makes it sound like the Holy Spirit's got his whip and he's, zapping us with it. It's not what that means. What that means is this will continue to recycle until I completely align with the truth of who I am. All right, so I think we have one more, which would be workbook 281. And again, re-emphasizing the concept of this is coming from me, not from what is on the outside, but also be very aware that the outside was done purposely so we would have this to point the finger at. And we've been doing that for eons of time. So suddenly trying to turn this around and consistently remind ourselves it's not about the squirrel or the coffee or my brother or whatever, it's about this, is going to take some retraining. It was set up to do this so that we would continually play this role forever and ever and ever. The Course is cracking that cosmic egg and allowing us to know there's another way. All right, who was going to say something?
I just wanted to say that I remember through the years, my mother, or people in my family would say, what's the purpose of this? I'm suffering so much. What's the purpose of the suffering?
Right.
And they would then say, well, kind of half-heartedly give it over, or say, well, Jesus suffered on the cross, I guess, or but then the person I work with now will say, why hast thou forsaken me, is one of her sayings now, thinking about Jesus on the cross. And that this paragraph, I have it. Notice I have like it's a 5-star paragraph with the line under this and that and the 5 stars, and just that it gives. So because I think that the question is, well, what's the purpose of all this pain?
Right.
And there it just lays it right out, and it really does comfort and alleviate that sense of being abandoned by God.
Yes.
That Jesus was on the cross for 3 hours, and here I am, suffering with this half of my life, or there's some kind of pain that my friend is going through, and why. And so it's interesting for me, because I don't say why, and I don't read her this book. I just sit with her, and I feel comforted by being able to sit there and just be. It's very interesting to me, and I really do treasure that ability at this point.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. And that whole prayer of why hast thou forsaken me, from the perspective of the Course, that gets turned around completely, totally the opposite direction. Because the Course says God did not kick us out of heaven, as the Bible says. We chose to leave collectively as one son. Then experienced the guilt, sin, and fear, didn't know what to do with it, were afraid to go back home, so we made up the dream of separation and played this game of an innocent victim ever since. So we don't have to play oh, why did you leave me? Why did you cause all this pain? I mean, and I think everybody in the group here has asked those questions. Why is a child born with a problem? Or why is there war? Why? Well, if you understand, the why comes because we made a world that's less than perfect. It can't not be less than perfect, because it's the opposite of perfection. And so to me, that makes this such an easy thing to grasp of, I can understand why it's this way now. And I don't have to question and doubt that any longer, as I did most of my life. So
and the other thing is that a very dear friend of mine is, well, I met people who were disabled at an early age,
Right.
because it was in my family. And my friend that I made, that her particular disability, to me, when I first met her, was like just totally insurmountable. And yet she was about 2 years older than me, and she didn't have a problem with it. She learned to surmount it by understanding that she just, in her own way, was like everybody else. And that's what drew us to each other, was I realized that she had inside of that body that was, really, I mean, she couldn't care for herself at all. But inside of that body, or, inside of her mind, she wasn't that. And that was a really interesting lesson to me at that age, that she wasn't that. To someone else, it looked like she, oh, poor her, poor Suzanne, poor her. And she didn't feel that way. And it was very, I mean, it was mind blowing. And that was enough to kind of shake me out of some things about, religion or, what, pour this and pour that. It like we all have, there's no, like you say, no large or small situation. It's just the way we look at it.
Right, right. And when you were saying that, the thought came up for me of a person that has anorexia, and they look in the mirror and they think they're fat, but they're not. In her case, she looked in the mirror and thought she was fine. Other people may have seen her with an issue, but it wasn't there because her mind must have been somewhat aligned.
I mean, and it really was their issue. I mean, and I confronted it initially. I confronted it as my issue because when I met her, I thought, well, she wanted to go to college, and my mind about me was, if I look like that and was in that position, I wouldn't want to go out of the house, let alone go to college. And that made, that was such a mind-blowing experience.
Yeah, beautiful. Good example for you. All right, so we're going to go to workbook workbook lesson 70, paragraph 1. Anybody wants to look along. So this workbook lesson is called My Salvation Comes from Me. So if the problem came from me, the salvation comes from me, or the healing comes from me. All temptation is nothing more than some form of the basic temptation not to believe the idea for today. So when I believe that salvation has to come from this person doing something different so that I can be okay, I'm looking outside for peace that is never going to happen. Salvation seems to come from anywhere except from you. And again, that was purposely set up so that we would believe that the answer comes from outside of me instead of me, to keep us from ever looking where the cause of the problem lies. So too does the source of guilt. So all of this is wrapped up in guilt as well. You see neither guilt nor salvation as in your own mind and nowhere else. We see it here. We see it in my body. I feel guilty. How many of us will say, but I feel guilty about this or that? The guilt comes from the mind. It doesn't come from Mary Ann's brain. It comes from the setup of the choice for the ego. When you realize that all guilt is solely an invention of your mind, you will also realize that guilt and salvation must be in the same place. So when I understand that the guilt is in my mind and I have a mind that is guilt-free, I can choose to drop the guilty mind or observe it and pay attention to it. And as I'm doing that, I'm literally releasing myself from it. In understanding this, you are saved. And we're going to go to paragraph 2. The seeming cost of accepting today's idea is this. It means that nothing outside yourself could save you. Nothing outside yourself can give you peace. But it also means that nothing outside yourself can hurt you or disrupt you, or disturb your peace or upset you in any way. Now, that is absolutely not our experience, people. Not even close. Everything seems like it's on the outside that's taking my peace away. When Rose, 5 minutes before she saw the squirrels eating the bird food, she didn't think, the squirrels are, she didn't think I've lost my peace because of what's in my mind. She opened the door and bam, there it was. It has to be the squirrel. 5 minutes ago, I thought I was at peace. But the Course would say, if you can lose your peace, you're really not at peace. And you weren't at peace. You simply were, taking a break from the specific issue. But when the issue comes up, it's a reminder that now you can do something different. Today's idea places you in charge of the universe where you belong because of what you are. And underline that, star it, as Andrea was saying, because that is where the power of this course lies. Today's idea, which is my salvation comes from me, places you in charge of the universe where you belong because of what you are. And it says this is a role that this is not a role that can be partially accepted. And you must surely begin to see that accepting it is salvation. So, the good news is this is not the problem. My choice is the problem. The bad news is now I have to be totally responsible if I want a shift or a change to occur in my experience. So we've been playing this game of it's something and somebody else, and we've got to drop that party, guys. And again, we're addicted to this party, so it's going to continue to try to recycle and pull you in over and over and over. And as you become more intellectually inclined with the course, and it becomes more and more solid in your ability, you will start to, break or interrupt that storyline in the midst of the terrifying experience. As Rose was, let's use the coffee again. Her initial response was, how dare he do that to me? Then she took the responsibility of, wait a minute, this is not because of what he did or didn't do. It's how I am interpreting this scenario. And then she put some work into recognizing what the dynamics of what was going on were, and eventually could shift that around.
Like we don't even want to so with the squirrel, I'm thinking, so it isn't that you're supposed to be nice to animals or that you're supposed to accept all the animals as equal. And it looks like the two choices are, one, you're ready to shoot the squirrel, or you have to kiss up to the squirrel. Like, oh, I have to be nice to this animal because after all, they deserve to eat too. And all those things just make it more, we try to make that be the issue rather than that it's neither one of those, that there's actually peace to be found in that space. After we don't think we have to, that we're allowed to just explore and be and relax into that space rather than thinking we have to do something special now because, oh, that's a living thing too. And now don't, I mean, it's just, and that's really upsetting, because really in our culture, we're not used to dealing with those animals or those rodents or whatever. And how dear that animal, it's just such a deeply rooted thing. And so to think that we don't have to do anything, and that we can't do anything to bring the peace, that we have to ask for help.
Right. And I think it's really important that we walk away from the need or the thinking I have to make nice. Okay?
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
Because making nice is not filtering through this process. It may kind of cover over the scenario a little bit and actually make it look better. It may even look like, well, for a little while we got that problem solved, but we haven't really solved the problem that needs to be solved for reconnecting to who we are. Okay, so if you are still making nice, acknowledge that I am, and keep trying to dig a little bit deeper to come to the core of what's going on below that.
Well, it's comforting to know that, like, I listen to other people make nice especially about animals, because I live on a ravine and we've had skunks and of course squirrels and now we have coyotes back there, and it's just very interesting what other people say about it. And when I had trouble with the woodchucks, I had a lot of advice. My neighbor said, you know, well, you can give him bubble gum and you can do this and do that. And I'm thinking to myself, holy cow. And finally I just went to bed. I said, I don't know what to do. Help me. And then when I got up, I did do what I felt the Holy Spirit was telling me to do. I did it in peace. And but my answer to it was still different from what everybody else got. It was my personal journey. I mean, it was interesting to me because there was no like real way to do it, other than having people telling me things like that the only way you could really get rid of them was to shoot them, and like I was going to go do target practice now on these animals, you know. So it was just interesting. That's the most interesting part, is that your answer through the Holy Spirit, it's totally different from other people's answer, wherever they get their answers from. And at that point, when the Holy Spirit's talking and I'm getting the answer, I don't care what anybody else says or what happens. And I see that that makes it be like how it's an illusion. You know, that these things are illusions we're going through. These animals, whatever we're going through, is an illusion. And when I could, you know, finally, I couldn't connect with it on a worldly basis. I couldn't connect with what to do or why or who's the expert and all this stuff. And only when I asked the Holy Spirit, it didn't matter who the expert was. It just mattered that I had a sense of peace about what I was doing. And I'm just glad I didn't have to shoot him. That's all, I guess.
Well, and I think that along with what you were saying, that it will look different for everyone, it also can be quite a surprise as to what answer does come forth, because it may not have been anything you would have ever thought of in your own mind. So, yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Marianne?
Yep.
So we have all kinds of squirrels. We have all kinds of chipmunks. And we have deer.
Right.
And the people have approached me, wanted to get rid of these animals. And my remark to them was, these animals were here before I was here. I am taking up their space, and as long as the animals don't do any harm, they are very welcome.
Right, there you
And
go.
I didn't have to go to the Holy Spirit and ask him or nothing.
Boy, that's good, because I sure did.
I will say my spiritual journey has prevented me. My spiritual journey has prevented me from even being able to swat a fly. I see life everywhere.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so I'm gonna read the last line in paragraph 7 back to our workbook lesson 196 where we started. And I'm gonna read the last line and then we'll carry on to paragraph number 8. All right, so until this shift has been accomplished, you cannot perceive that it is but your thoughts that bring you fear, and your deliverance depends on you. So what we need to do our best to grasp is that I'm never upset, again, for the reason I think, workbook lesson number 5, and the thoughts, the fears, everything is not coming because of what's going on the outside. And even though most of us probably aren't at a place where we can live that today, I invite you to hold that in the back of your mind of, this is where I want to come to understand, okay? So he goes on to say, our next steps will be easy if you take this one today. For there we go ahead quite rapidly. For once you understand, it is impossible that you be hurt except by your own thoughts. The fear of God must disappear. You cannot then believe that fear is caused without. And God, whom you had thought to banish, can be welcomed back within the holy mind he never left. So Jesus is just reminding us, when we really get that concept that it's not something outside of me, it's my thoughts, that the ride is going to be a whole lot easier, because we're not going to be playing in the wrong playground. For there we go quite rapidly. For once you understand it is impossible that you be hurt except by your own thoughts, the fear of God must disappear. And why would the fear of God disappear? Because if I start to understand the only problem really lies in the belief that I've separated from God, and the answer is I didn't separate from God, I'm going to start to see God from the lens of the real God, which is total unconditional love. I will drop my investment in the God of the God of sickness, as the Course speaks it, who is a wrathful God that can take my life and all that other kind of stuff that we associate an image of God with. The real God, or the God the Course is talking about, is a God of total, complete, unconditional love. Something we have no reason to fear any longer. Okay, and that's where acknowledging that I am the one that chose this and being willing to drop it will take me. You cannot then believe that fear is caused without. Okay, as we understand, I'm the one that chose this, and if I chose it, this cannot be the problem anymore. I can't have that decoy if it's coming from my mind. And God, whom you had thought to banish, can be welcomed back within the holy mind he never left. So what that basically means is, as we start to remove the blocks to the awareness of love, we will then begin to see God through the lens of love. We'll see ourselves through the lens of love. And as he says, you will be welcomed back within the holy mind he never left. Well, the Course talks about frequently that though it appears that we have two parts of our mind, one of them is not real, and the only one that is real is the mind of God. So when he said, welcome back within the holy mind he never left, this is just an illusion that we've taken a detour, I guess you could say, only none of this is real. And when we get back online, or get back aligned with love, we'll remember we never really left in the first place. All right, paragraph 9. Salvation's song can certainly be heard in the idea we practice for today. If it can but be you crucify, you did not hurt the world and need not fear its vengeance and pursuit. Nor need you hide in terror from the deadly fear of God projection hides behind. The thing you dread the most is your salvation. You are strong, and it is strength you want. And you are free and glad of freedom. You have sought to be both weak and bound because you feared your strength and freedom. Yet salvation lies in them. So one of the challenges we have is that we're afraid of salvation. Okay, because salvation means there's no duality, there's no me, none of that is any longer there. So literally, as we keep choosing, we're diminishing our identification with what we believe we are. And what we believe we are is separated from the love of God. So as we begin to walk back here, this starts to fade away. And to the degree that I'm afraid of the love of God, that will be felt as a threat. But Jesus is trying to encourage us to keep stepping forward, because he knows when we choose for love, it's going to bring us to something that's way better than what we've been experiencing. So salvation song can certainly be heard in the idea we practice for today. And again, the idea we practice for today is, it can be but myself I crucify. So when I start to recognize it is always me I'm crucifying when I attack my brother, we will start to let go of that game that is not getting us where we want to go, especially if we really just want peace. If it can be, if it can but be you crucify, you did not hurt the world and need not fear its vengeance and pursuit. Well, we didn't hurt the world because there really is no world. All the things, we might think of in the past, the mistakes we made, the fears we had, they never happened. And, Denise was asking about the past before. Well, the past is just part of the trick that keeps us very stuck in the illusion as well. And when we, release the past, it can't hold us any longer. And if in true, it's not real, why would I want to cling to it or hold on to it? And yet it's, again, quite a setup for the illusion or the ego. Nor need you hide in terror from the deadly fear of God projections hide behind. So we don't have to be afraid of the God of love because he's just love. And much like the prodigal son, eventually the son came back to the father only to find that the father was waiting with his arms open with love, waiting for him to return. But we don't trust that God yet because we have projected the guilt, sin, and fear onto an image called the God of sickness, not the real God that the Course talks about. So the thing you dread the most is your salvation. And, we could question ourselves, why would I be afraid of salvation? That sounds ridiculous. But again, to the degree we're addicted to this, salvation is not our buddy yet. But each time we choose or we observe, we're becoming more aligned with this. So eventually there'll come a time when, yes, I want only this and nothing else. You are strong and it is strength you want. So we want to align with our strength. And you are free and glad of freedom. Well, there's a part of us that's yearning for this answer, or we wouldn't be sitting here every Saturday afternoon, 3 o'clock. Something calling us to that freedom. You have sought to be both weak and bound because you feared your strength and freedom. And again, there is a connotation of this is bad because we made a pact with the ego that we would never, ever, 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 ever look to find out that there was really nothing there. Yet salvation lies in them. All right, on to paragraph 10. There is an instant in which terror seemed to grip your mind so wholly that escape appears quite hopeless. When you realize once and for all that it is you fear, the mind perceives itself as split. And this had been concealed while you believed attack was directed outward and returned from outside to within. It seemed to be an enemy outside you had to fear, and thus a God outside yourself became your mortal enemy, the source of fear. All right, so there is an instant in which terror seemed to grip your mind so wholly that escape appeared quite hopeless. Well, the Course talked about that moment of terror when we had the tiny mad idea and we decided that we wanted to be special, different, God basically. And when we chose that, then the absolute opposite experience of love rose to the surface, which scared the shit out of us, quite literally. And we were afraid of going back to love at that point. And we thought we were stuck in this forever. which we have been stuck in it for quite some time, until we finally get the idea there's something beyond this where the answers can be found. When you realize, and again he's saying once and for all, that it is you fear, the mind perceives itself as split. It appears I've got two things and it's me that I'm afraid of. Well, and there's another choice. And this has been concealed while you believed attack could be directed outward and returned from outside to within. So I didn't realize that I had another choice, another mind to choose from, because all I knew what was going on here. It seemed to be an enemy outside you had to fear. There's something out here that I have to hide from. And thus a God outside yourself became your mortal enemy, the source of fear. And again, just like we project our guilt, sin, and fear on our brother, the first image that we projected onto was God. So we made of God all the attributes of guilt, sin, and fear, and then we were afraid of the love of God. We weren't afraid of the real love, the real God. We were afraid of the God that we made up as a decoy to keep this thought system going. And then we did it equally to our brother as well as to ourselves. All right, paragraph 11. Now for an instant is a murderer perceived within you, eager for your death, intent on plotting punishment for you until the time when it can kill at last. Yet in this instant is the time as well in which salvation comes. For fear of God has disappeared, and you can call on him to save you from illusions by his love, calling him Father and yourself his Son. Pray that the instant may be soon, today. Step back from fear and make advance to love. Okay, so now for an instant is a murder perceived within you. So we're literally have to face, and we talked about the idea of look, we have to look at the fact that we made this up to camouflage where the real problem lies. And that the murderer is within me because we believe we killed off God to exist. And, you know, if we look at this chart here, when God was on the throne, he gave us everything that he had. The moment we basically kicked him off the throne because we wanted to be in charge, we literally killed off the image of God in order for us to exist. And when we took that seriously, we then lived in guilt, sin, and fear, death, projection, and that we're all different. And there was a me and a God. And then we continued to project that thought system to a me and my brother, my me and my car and everything else. But underlying this is the belief that we've killed off God to exist in duality. Because oneness, I should say oneness and duality cannot live in the same space. It's one or the other.
So could you say that this murderer perceived within you, you put that to the squirrel. You rearrange it, your thought to that being the murderer, that, and if it wasn't for them, you would be at peace. So that and just in that instant, you perceive the squirrel as the problem, and you project that. You project your that thing within you onto the squirrel or onto the other things that are going to bother you, the coffee and the
correct
woodchuck. Yes,
there's actually, you know, because a lot of times people will come to be aware that there was a moment where we took this seriously, and that's where the problem began. But literally every time we reinforce that it's the squirrel or the cup of coffee or my brother that's the problem, we're reinforcing that thought. And there's a place in the Course where it says each day and every minute, each day and every instant that each minute holds, you but relive the single instant when the time of terror took the place of love. So we're constantly reinforcing this. And when we can stop, again, like what Rose was saying, and recognize it's not my brother that's the problem. It's not, the squirrel that's the problem. It's not my brother that's the problem. It's the thought system that set up the seeming problem that is where the issue lies. Then we can begin to reconnect with the love instead of rehash and recycle the terror. So it's a very powerful concept to be able to come to that realization. And the rest of the time, we're just reinforcing that same moment over and over and over again.
We just keep talking about the duality. We just keep looking at the duality instead of where is the oneness. We're not interested. We're not curious about the oneness any longer. We're looking for the duality.
Correct.
To be able to project it onto the other thing.
Right. Well, and understand that the duality sustains my life of the separated character. I have to have duality. I have to have a perpetrator in order to play the part of an innocent victim. And it doesn't matter if it's in relationship to God or anything else. I need this storyline to survive. Okay?
And it's not you, and it's not the squirrel. It's the situation. It's the setup.
Correct. It's a setup. Yes. Yeah.
And so that's what's really nice about it. When you start to get all antsy about something, it's not me and it's not you. It's the setup.
Perfect. Yes. Yes. And again, it's going to feel like it's them or it's going to feel like it's me. And that's because this is so deeply worn into our thinking. But when we catch it for even a second, you're stopping that. You're interrupting that whole thought system from repeating itself, as it said, each day, every minute, and each day and every instant that each minute holds, you but relive the single instant when the time of terror took the place of love. And when you interrupt that, you're allowing the place of love to open up.
And you always have that capability. You always have, that's the door that's been closed most of my life. So that's the door that is there, hidden in plain sight. And it's the one I can go through to, or the one I asked to see. But yeah, the idea that it's always the same, it's like it's the same old story all the time. Like what's happening isn't, well, so-and-so is just being an ass. It's that I'm not allowing the truth to come in. I'm putting my perception in the way of the truth.
Yes, good, well put, because literally, the idea of removing the blocks to the awareness of love, if I use this block, I can't see love. I will never be able to see love if I'm blaming or pointing a finger at something outside of me. And again, even my own body, because my body is outside of this thought system. And we project it into our bodies as well as we did into other people's bodies. And as long as we're pointing, we're not getting it, because the pointing, there is no thumb, as we read all those places today, there is nothing outside you that's taking your peace away. What the things outside of you are doing is triggering the memory of where the problem is, but it's not the problem.
And it's our cue to wake up.
Yes,
that's our cue, because we're going to keep having those cues about whatever shows up in the backyard, or the coyotes. Now that's the new
fashion.
The new issue. Yeah, the new So what will we do with the coyotes? I mean, I think I can handle the coyotes, but I think if they start in on the bears, I'm going to be done.
Right.
But anyway, hopefully that I'll just read more in the course and get over that too.
Here you go. Somebody else? Yes.
I was going to say today, I was just going to share this. I think it goes with what we're saying. I was ordering our subs at Penn Station this afternoon, and I had to wait for them for a while. And so I sat down and I noticed that, I was pretty peaceful, and, I didn't really it was just calm and everything was very, very peaceful. And then all of a sudden, just like a knife, it's just a sharp, like pain. And it hurt. Like, it just was like, so I can realize now, I see that it is like, oh, there's the ego, he's coming in hard, he's coming in strong.
Coming in
and I tried not to judge that. I sort of let it,
beautiful.
I realized that I was having this feeling, and that, yeah, this is okay. This is what I do, not judging. And it sort of passed, I think. But the not judging part, I think, helped a lot.
Yes. Beautiful. All right. Marianne? Yes.
I have a question to ask.
Sure.
Anybody try to get this together? I never heard it this way. You said the Holy Spirit will repeat until we learn the lesson?
No, I said that's what it made it sound like, but no, the Holy Spirit does not do that. We're the ones that did it. We're the ones that have to go back. But no, the Holy Spirit is not doing this to it. He doesn't have a whip, and he's not putting us in line. He just sits and, like a lighthouse. It represents the light within us. And it's they go, come and go from that light.
Okay, I misunderstood that, because I know a lot of times
Sort of sound that way, though, and I understand I would be asking that question, but no.
Because I know a lot of times I feel like my soul is calling for that lesson to come back again until I learn it.
Well,
and there it is. I gotta deal with it again.
Right. So actually that's interesting, because in paragraph 11, it says, now for an instant is a murder perceived within you, eager for your death. Okay, because when we choose for the ego, we literally bought the package of death, for one thing. And then when it says, intent on plotting punishment for you until the time when it can kill at last. There are numerous places where the Course talks about the idea of, we don't wait for God to punish us. We will self-punish us. And one of the ways that, just like you were saying, Linda, is, I'm not good enough. I deserve this pain and whatever. Well, you don't deserve that pain. You believe you do, because of the belief that you're guilty for having chosen wrong.
And I do say that.
Yep. Yeah, and it's sick, but that's the setup. Again, like Andrea was saying, that's the setup. The setup is, I'm going to remain an innocent victim, and it doesn't matter if it's somebody else, or if it's God, or it's anything beyond me or outside of me. Not true. All those places we read today, I hope you guys all underline, which I don't usually encourage that necessarily, but they were constantly trying to bring us back, and for me too, don't get me wrong, of this is because of this is what I want. Not as Marianne. Marianne's a puppet just like the other characters, but as the choice, there has to be a problem in order for me to play the part of an innocent victim. And don't add guilt to this. Simply use this as an understanding. This is the setup. Do I like the setup? And if the answer is no, know that there's another way to do this.
Well, I hear you what you're saying, and I was talking to somebody today, and I was feeling guilt, and I says to her, gosh, I wish I had done the Course in Miracles caught it back then, maybe I would be further along, but it wasn't meant to be.
Right. And
It was when I was ready.
Right. And that's another way the ego can slip in there and go, well, you know, you should have done, well, it's when it is what it is, and be glad that you have it now.
Yeah.
Because the ego's it doesn't care how it jabs you, guys. I'm telling you, it doesn't care. As long as it wraps you back into guilt or feeling like you're doing it wrong or whatever.
So Marianne,
good at its job. Go ahead.
Just to clarify on what
Yes.
Linda said, when I hear the words "we chose this," who's we?
Okay. Collectively as one, the Son of God chose us. After we made that choice and we were afraid to go back home, and we were now in an experience of the opposite of what we were, in other words, total light, holy oneness, blah, 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 duality, terror, fear, blah, blah, blah. We were afraid to go back. We couldn't tolerate the pain of that experience. So we projected into the world, splintered out into bazillions of little seemingly individual characters or situations, all of which have both parts of our mind that can, whenever we're ready, choose for the other choice. So what was the question?
So when we say we, it doesn't mean Dawn specifically, but there was a collective consciousness of choice.
Right. It was before there was a Dawn.
Okay.
Dawn. Okay. It was collectively as one sun that took place. But now, as we experience the world as separated little characters and bodies, each one of us have both of these parts in our mind. And most of the time, we're blaming ourselves for what this body's doing. It doesn't have anything to do what my body does or doesn't do. It has to do with the thought system that we're aligning with.
So that gets back to what Andrea was saying. It's the setup. It's not.
There you go. Excellent.
Dawn or Andrea. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
And, be very aware of how quickly, with the guilt cycle, I guess you could say, how quickly we're going to blame ourselves for wishing we did something better or different or didn't do it or whatever, because that keeps us here.
Thank you.
Very sneaky stuff.
So it's almost like it's a giant conspiracy that we all agreed to participate in somehow.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Yeah. And we got so involved in it. And then we forgot that this was available. Understand that, this was all there was. And then we chose this, and then we forgot this even existed. Then we lived here, and then we projected into this, and we forgot that existed. So we really live in this experience of time and space thinking that's all there is and that's all there ever was. So we did our best within this square to survive. Course is now, lifting up a veil and showing us, look what's going on here. But you're right, conspiracy, absolutely. And a conspiracy of a lie that isn't even true, but it runs the show. Yeah. All right, so back to paragraph 11, I think we're on the second line. Yet in this instant is the time as well in which salvation comes. So whenever we're in this instant where the terror happens, we also have the flip side of that, which is the salvation that is available to us. And for those of you that might not know the story, apparently Helen and Bill were in a working situation, and they always argued all the time. The only time they ever had peace was when they were working on the course. But in the work situation, they were almost mortal enemies. And one day they were going to go into a meeting, and one of them said to the other, there must be another way. And the other one agreed. And each of us will come to that kind of a moment, not necessarily obviously those words, where the realization that this isn't working. I want to find another way, where that shift of, I want to find an answer that this world does not provide, that, something's missing in this formula. So So as it says, in this instant is the time as well in which salvation comes, because now I know there's another way. For fear of God has disappeared. When we start to align with this, the fear of God is going to disappear. And we're going to choose this because this becomes too intolerable. And then we'll begin to trust this more and more, and the fear is going to continue to diminish. And I know sometimes we talk about the idea that choosing this means I'm literally going to disappear, because the only purpose of this is to maintain this thought system. But as this process happens, it's a very, very, very gradual process. So you're just going to become more acclimated to this, less acclimated to this, to the point where there's no longer any fear, and I totally align with this. And you can call on him to save you from illusions by his love, calling him Father and yourself his Son. So as we begin to pull down the veil of seeing God through the lens of the ego God, and we begin to call on what the true God is, we will begin to trust that his response is always going to come from a place of love. Pray that the instant may be soon. How about today? Step back from fear and make advance to love. And, you know, something even like what Shelley was saying, of sitting, waiting for the food, and then suddenly, like almost like somebody stabbed her. The pain was so painful. And to just, you know, look at that, step back from it, and recognize, just the ego slipping in just another way. And as we allow that to dissipate, instead of make a big deal out of it, it just falls away, and the connection with love can occur. Okay, paragraph 12. There is no capital T thought of God that does not go with you to help you reach that instant and go beyond it quickly, surely, and forever. When the fear of God is gone, there are no obstacles that still remain between you and the holy peace of God. And understand how we see ourselves, our brother, and God are all equal. So if I'm aligned with God and there's no longer fear, I will have no fear within me, and I will see no fear in relationship to my brother. How kind and merciful is the idea we practice. Give it welcome as you should, for it is your release. It is indeed, but you, your mind, can try to crucify. Yet your redemption too will come from you. So again, the problem is we chose to separate. The answer is we didn't separate. In fact, there's workbook lessons that talk about the idea there's one problem, one solution. The problem is we believe we chose to separate. The solution is nothing happened. And if you look over here on the side of the chart, under the Holy Spirit, it says nothing happened. On this side, it says it really happened. And then we fall into the trap of the conspiracy of the lie of the ego. So there's no thought of God that does not go with you to help you reach that instant and to go beyond it quickly, surely, and forever. So that thought of God is constantly with us. Not only is it constantly with us, it literally is us. It doesn't go away, but to the degree that we cover over it with the cloud of the ego, we can't see it. This is here all the time, simply covered over by the cloud of the ego. And as we begin to move the cloud away, we can start to experience what that love is, but then we quickly cover it up because we're too afraid. And slowly, 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 we will only know this and we'll throw this away. But we're addicted to this. This has been our home for eons of time, literally since the Big Bang. So we cling to it even though it's very sick. But slowly we will become more comfortable with choosing for the love that we really are. When the fear of God is gone, there are no obstacles and that still remain between you and the holy peace of God. So there'll come a time when we totally release ourselves from all the obstacles that have kept us, stuck here. And we will know who we are, we'll know who God is, and we will unequivocally know who our brother is. And that's why we will see our brother the same instead of different. Because over here is oneness. We're the same. We're not different any longer. All right, let's see. How kind and merciful is the idea we practice? And Jesus is saying, yeah, harsh. It is but me I crucify. But the good news is, with the understanding of that also comes salvation. Because if I understand I'm doing this to myself, I can now undo it myself as well. Give it welcome as you should, for it is your release. It is indeed but you, your mind can try to crucify. But let's not do that anymore. Yet your redemption too will come from you. So good news, bad news, guys. But at least there is news, because as long as we played over here, there was no way out. Impossible.
Marianne?
Yes.
You know what I thought of? I know for myself how powerful my mind and my words are.
Yep.
Yeah, I could shoot at anybody, think fast, anybody get angry, and how powerful that is. And I understand how I just crucify myself so many times of this thought pattern. And all this power that we have, and yet I can't open my heart and say, God, I need your help, by sending that energy out to release that I am one with God with love.
Yep.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but many times no, because I've got a battle with this power of my mind.
Yes. Yes, and there's a place in the Course where it says, if we were honest, wouldn't we admit that it's easier to hate than it is to love? And what that really represents, Linda, is we're just more addicted to this side than we are to this at this time. So even when you recognize and you observe that, be very gentle. Simply observe it, go, well, of course, how else would a silly little ego act? And the more you can be gentle with yourself, the more we can come to a place of release. Because it's what the ego wants us to do is, there's a problem, I attack it, I do whatever I do, and then I feel guilty because I did it. It wraps you by the tail and just whoops you back in here. The more I can look at it, observe, oh, well, of course Linda's going to act like an ego. That's what egos do. And not take it quite so seriously. And I know that sounds a lot easier than it is to practice, but that's kind of our goal.
Well, that the ego is a part of the playground. We can't.
Yep.
We're not going to be any place in this form where the ego is not. So it's the bully on the playground maybe, and there's a way, if there's a way around it, then that has to be the Holy Spirit, because you as a body or as a as anything cannot overcome that.
No.
And just to recognize goes with the territory, and then you can, you accept it. You accept that as what we have to deal with, instead of always thinking what a shame it is that this thing has to be there and wish you could do something about it, and you can't.
And again, the problem can never, ever, 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 ever be solved here. And that doesn't mean I couldn't change a job and now my job feels like it's a better job than my last job. but we're talking about healing of the mind that goes to an extremely different level than, you know, playing around in the playground over here. All right, I think it's about that time. So we will do our usual prayer, and then I will open it up if anybody has any conversation they want to continue with. Okay, take a nice big deep breath and let it all go. Forgive us our illusions, Father, and help us to accept our true relationship with you, in which there are no illusions and where none can ever enter. Our holiness is yours. What can there be in us that needs forgiveness when yours is perfect? The sleep of forgetfulness is only the unwillingness to remember your forgiveness and your love. Let us not wander into temptation, for the temptation of the Son of God is not your will. And let us receive only what you have given, and accept but this into the minds which you created and which you love. Amen. All right, good to have everybody here, and look forward to seeing you the next time.